Let's do the Good Life meditation for today. It's been a while since I've done this publicly, but I do it every day in my head. A little warmed up to it. No pun intended. It's going to be 110 degrees today here in Siberia. I've got my writing done already, which is a good thing. Because the hotter it gets, the madder my writing gets. Which is a good thing in some ways, because then the writing is more honest, more genuine, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to say that I'm too timid to share, because it just sounds crazy. We're not crazy, but it doesn't sit well. Like, I'm becoming more and more comfortable with my nihilism, however you say it, my conviction. Is it a conviction on faith? No, it's a conviction. It's a conviction on no reason to think otherwise. That the universe has no apparent reason. There's no purpose in our being here necessarily. So we're up to us to make up our own purpose. That's what the good life is all about. That's what going alone, the message in going alone, is discovering that nihilism, discovering that emptiness here in the desert. And throughout the echoing throughout the decades of my life from my late teens, and then deciding not to despair, not to become apathetic, not to give up, not to end it all in frustration that life has no apparent meaning, but instead to build meaning, objectively founded meaning, with the exception of the one principle, the pirate ride, which is more faith than anything else. I give in to it. I just can't help it. You can't choose what you believe. Sometimes you can. It's just something I believe. So let's get into it. The Good Life has 30 items now, 30 objects. First 6 of them or maybe it's 7, are objectives, the things that I'm striving towards in life. First, to be always ready to die. To have all my affairs in good order. My finances, my relationships, and my art. Finances, not so much. Although if I keeled over right now, my family would get by. They'd hop on a plane and head back to Japan, my wife and daughter, and go become wrapped in the bosom of the extended family there, and they'd be just fine. Family's good. Family's fine. Best ever. Literally have really sought to cultivate and build upon the relationships of my life in very, very narrow scope. I have no friends really anymore, just some very close acquaintances. Some people who might be called friends, but I hesitate to use that word anymore because I've been such a bad friend in the past. I'm just not very interested in that social dynamic. It seems to me a lot of filler stuff, a lot of gossip and blabber and nonsense, and there's not enough time to do that kind of stuff. Although it may be fun, but I need the grounding. We all need the grounding of some people in our life to be the establishment for the rest. To be our connections, some grounding. Like I said, that's the best word, grounding. And that's my wife and my daughter and my brother and my mom. And I'd make my best efforts with all of these. I could do better. I could do better on all fronts, but particularly my wife and daughter I'm in good shape with. And the final one is the art. And the art's fine. It's just, the Good Life is done. I mean, going alone is done. It's a copy of it sitting on the shelf at home. So if I keel over today, Emily, and I told Emily, I said, that's what I wanted to say. If I die today, that's that book there has got everything that I found that I discovered in the course of my life. And of course, I told her that the instantiation of her out of us was the most worthwhile thing. Yeah, I'll get that to the principle of purpose in just a second. At least that's the one that has the approving nod of biology, capital B, biology. So many fronts into woo. Kurt. Whew. How did you become such a person? So, be always ready to die. Finances, family, and art. I think I've got those are as good as could be at the moment. Oh, like I said, okay, I've dwelled long enough. How long did that take to get through the first one? The next one, number 2, objective number 2, the good and effective use of time. Not to waste my time, not to let it just slide through my fingers like sand and stones through my fingers here. Just let it go away. There's not enough of it. I got so little left. Gosh, how few summers there remain. And this one's about to pass. September 5th, September 6th today. Already the bite of summer is past. The deep bite of summer. The deep teeth in your skin bite of summer of July and August. Particularly July out here. Next, number 3 is the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. And sound. They have to be sound. So why did I smuggle in the pirate ride? Because it's a matter of faith. It's not sound, but I think it's good. I'll get to that in a second. And I do that every day by reflecting on these things, and it slowly grows. When I first started the Good Life, when I first enumerated I tried to make an attempt at enumerating the things that were important. There were 5 items. Now there's 30. So they grow slowly, but less slowly in the recent years. I think I'm getting close. And the later ones are really interesting ones. Not superfluous. Substantial. And I probably couldn't have got to them without the effort and time of the earlier objectives and principles. The later ones came in good turn as a matter of course. Next is the cultivation of good emotional reactions. Learning to throw my finger. Excuse me, this is so gross. Got it out. Got a little thorn stuck inside. Had to kind of suck it out. The cultivation of good emotional reactions, just learning to react well to the circumstances of life, not to fly off the handle. Not that I was ever want to do that too much, but I could in the past kind of get frustrated and it kind of just bubbles up and screw it all. I'm never a violent man or abusive, but definitely prone to let my emotions show. Doing a good job of that. So now I'm getting better, much better at having good emotional reactions, especially since the introduction of the pirate ride. Next is the performance of good actions, just doing good things throughout the day. Pick up trash, hold the door, say thank you, things like that. Next is the recognition of true limits and true opportunity. Recognize what is within the scope of my ability and what is not. Like yesterday, last night as the train was going by on the railroad there, and they give 4 honks of the horn as they go through the siding right over there, go across the crossing. And the first one, woo, and I imagine in my mind, there's nothing in my power to stop that conductor, that driver, from honking the horn the second time. It's completely outside of my control. That's an obvious point, right? But in more subtle ways, there are things that are outside of my control or limits, good limits and good opportunity outside of my limits. Global warming, for example. The big picture is outside of my control, but I can't. What is within my control is my ability to control my own carbon footprint and the decisions that I make, such as becoming a vegan, that have minute impact on the greater picture. That is within my control. So I exercise the control there, and I don't get too frustrated about the things that are outside of my control. That's where apathy comes in. We'll get to that about principle number 12 in the principle of temperance. And then the last objective is one thing slowly. To try to always endeavor to do just one thing and do it slowly, not too fast. Don't race through things. There's just not enough time to be racing to the finish line. I think that's 7. Now let's get on to the 23 principles. The first of these is the principle of war. To wake each morning ready to go to war with everything that I hold dear. That includes all 30 of these objectives and principles, in particular all 30 of them. I go to war with everything that I hold as true and that I believe, even if it's not sound, particularly if it's not sound. But I'm also going after everything that you propose is true too. I won't do it as a jerk, but I will question it. Thus my daily Bible study. 2, the principle of reason and the sub-principles of honesty and objectivity. Reason is the tool that I use in the execution of that war upon the things that I think are true or that I hold as belief. And I try to be honest with myself, not fool myself. And I try to be objective in my measure, to look at the real world, not the world of fantasy or make-believe or imagination or wishful thinking. 3, the homunculus. The homunculus is an imaginary little man that lives in my head, just behind my eyeballs, controlling the lever, steering the wheel. It's got a whole panel there, and this is the consciousness that I have within me that basically runs the ship, ostensibly. Although not really. There's a whole lot of sub-processes going on that regulate my heartbeat, breathing, body temperature, digestion, things like that I have no conscious awareness of. But the homunculus is the consciousness part. It's an important thing. The interesting point is, the reason I tell myself is that I want to remember that I have no reason to think that the homunculus is in any way anything other than a byproduct of my brain. If that's the case, then when I wink out and die, guess who else is coming with me? Into the nothing. Yeah, the homunculus. The homunculus is sealed and trapped inside that container. There's no escape hatch. And he knows, because he's me, he knows that he's going down with the ship. So no magical morphine or figuration off into some spiritual wonderland or a place of torment. Just death. And it's forever. And nothing coming back. No chance for, as I'll get to, reunion, reconciliation, or justice afterwards. So make sure you pursue those things now. Number 4, I believe, is the home of good and evil. And home and good and evil and homunculus are connected in a way. If the homunculus is my consciousness, picture I'm in a little cockpit up there in my head, then the home of good and evil are a record that he keeps of right and wrong, what he thinks is good and bad. And it's a ledger that's kind of above his head. I picture it as like a chalkboard. And he writes all these things in chalk, kind of like what I do down under the bridge, writing all my stuff under the bridge, the titles of all the good life. The homunculus is the caretaker and the arbiter of good and evil. Yes, good and evil are my own ideas. So each of us is responsible for our own decision about what constitutes right and wrong and good and evil. And if we're mature and judicious, we'll put that out into the public sector and to open it to scrutiny, and we will attempt to measure our good and evil against the measures that others have. And if we find that theirs is good and sound, their ideas are good and sound, then we should maybe consider adjusting ours if theirs is more good and sound than ours. These are all subjective. Objectivity comes into play when 2 or more agree that is indeed on a principle of right or wrong, and seek to pursue those, because now we have a measure by which we can pursue things. For example, I think that most of us would have an objective agreement that it is a good thing to have children at least go to school through secondary education, through to the 12th grade at least. I think we'd all agree that it's a bad thing to pull kids out of school earlier than that in order to start them on their lives. That they'll do better off, that the society will do better off if we can give children a full-rounded, well-rounded education. Once you and I agree on that, and that opinion of mine on my own is a subjective decision, subjective observation. But if you and I agree, then we have an objective measure that we can begin to build the world towards. We can begin formulating laws and policies and financial systems to ensure that that aim is achieved. It is an objective aim that has metrics that we can use to gauge our relative success. Next is the principle of purpose. Back to Emily. I only see two purpose in the universe. Well, only one, really. Really, the only one that I see is to stay alive and make babies. That seems to be, if life is just a complex chemical reaction, it seems that chemical reaction likes to instantiate, use that word again, more of itself. So life seems to have an objective desire and mandate to procreate. And hey, I've successfully done that. I've raised my daughter into adulthood. She's graduated from primary school. She's off into college now. I consider that work essentially complete, although I'll take her as far as I can with college. But, the primary element of it is complete. The other purpose so if that's it, if it's just that one purpose, I've decided that the other purpose for myself is the pursuit of virtue. Because I have decided, the homunculus has decided that virtue is a good thing. That the objective improvement of well-being is a good thing. So I set my course to do that. That's why I wrote Going Alone. That's why I'm writing The Good Life. That's why I wrote Freeway Bible Study. That's why I blog every single day, is to pursue that particular, I believe, worthy end. Next is the atomic principle. I get to pick up stones again. Sand is better. Everything is bits and pieces, and I'm dirty. We're all made up of atoms and molecules and compounds and bits and pieces that flow and change and do their thing, and for a while we're alive, and after that we're dead and we're decomposing back into it. It's good to remember that. All of this likewise. It's really just a big lattice of molecules and atoms. That's good to remember that, for I think self-evident reasons. Next is the principle of nature. Everything in the universe has some particular nature. That doesn't, not just life. It doesn't mean that it has some essence. It means that it's on a trajectory, kind of. Like stars, for example, the sun has a nature of burning lighter elements into heavier elements. Hydrogen to helium to carbon to oxygen to, on and on and on, all the way down to uranium and gold, right? In the supernova explosion. This ring on my finger came out of a supernova. That is the nature of a star. The nature of this creosote bush over here is to find a nice substrate to sit down its roots, and then to grow and to keep off the other creosote plants through chemical actions. It's the nature of a rattlesnake to slither in the dark hours and to use its pits to sense the heat, the infrared of other animals, and consume them and make more of itself. You get the picture, right? So everything has a particular nature. So if we remember that it's all just atoms and molecules, and they all have a particular nature, a way that they're moving forward and winding down towards entropy, it kind of sets the stage for a big production and performance, seemingly without a playwright or director. Remember, the laws of physics are descriptive, not prescriptive. That's an important point. I haven't really talked about that much before, but it's an important point. We describe how the universe works. The laws don't seem to say it so. They simply are so. Next is, the pirate ride, my new toy. The pirate ride, and this is the first time I've talked about it in The Good Life. The pirate ride is my new principle that suggests that we have no free will. This is something that I can't prove. It's just a matter of faith. My observation simply is that if the universe were to rewind, to go backward in time and come back, all things happened exactly the same. Every decision that I ever make throughout my life at every juncture would be exactly the same. That the implied idea there is that the universe, again, being connected to everything, being all those connections. I'm orchestrated towards the decisions that I made by far more than just my personal want and interest. And my personal want and interest are, again, a consequence of that greater universal interaction, that universal clockwork. So I don't think the free will exists, that even if I change my mind right now, I'm going to go this way or that way, I would have done that anyway. And then I could not have gone the other way and then the other way. Like that, it's just the way it goes. I can't demonstrate that that's the case. It's just a sense that I've got. I hold this thing to be true on faith, the pirate ride. But it's kind of an interesting thing once you put that into your head, because then everything that happened was going to happen, or maybe not fated, but at least there was no other option. That's the way it had to be. And in a way, it's like, the reason I call it the pirate ride is it's like being at Walt Disneyland. When you go through the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and you are going along on the boat, and there's the person, the guide with the pistol and the hippos, and there's all the animatronic hippos and crocodiles and natives, and then there's the pirates themselves, right? And you see the pirates, and they're standing there, and they got the gun, "Arr, matey, arr, matey, arr, matey," and that's all they're doing all day long, "Arr, matey," and you laugh at them. It's a pirate, it's an animatronic, it's a robot, it's all it can do. Then you think about it a little bit, and you realize, me too, I'm a pirate too. It's kind of a good thing in a way. We still have control, but we don't. Okay, the next one after the pirate ride is the principle of maturity and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. Maturity is a state that we arrive at in life when we've made mistakes, we remember those mistakes, and we have the strength and will to not make those mistakes again. It takes time to get there. The fortitude can be taught. Witness the Marines. The maturity, the wisdom, that just comes with age. Although you can read about what wise people say, but it's a lot harder to put it into practice without your own trial and error. Next is the social principle. We're social animals. We need one another to survive. In fact, that's just the principle I just wrote. So I didn't write it under the bridge. I wrote it over there while I watched the sunrise. We need one another. You need people. I need people. Watch out. If you're like me and you're tempted to go deep and long alone, watch out, because there are consequences to that. What you find out there might be true, but you may not be able to relate it to anyone else. I'm sure when a universe of 100 billion galaxies, each of which has 100 million stars, and each of which those has 5 to 9 planets, I'm sure there's a lot of realities out there that are true, yet practically unrelatable. Don't even have to go so far away to find them. They're right here. They're right behind me. They're right under that bridge. If I linger too long under that bridge, I'll find them. But I won't be able to talk to anybody about them if I'm not social. So be social. Have friends. Have family. Be social. The next principle is the principle of public speaking. I think this is the first time I've talked about this one as well. The principle of public speaking simply is a reminder to myself to not gossip. That when I'm talking about somebody, talk about them as if they're sitting there right there with me. Imagine that they're right there. That's going to prevent me from saying untoward things or unflattering things or things that would embarrass me if they found out, which I shouldn't be saying anyway, unless there's good cause, unless that person is prone to murder and is drunk and has a pistol. Then I should probably be talking about that with the police. But otherwise, I don't think you need to be talking about your I don't need to be talking about my coworkers and I don't need to be talking about my family. I don't need to be talking about my friends, and I don't need to be talking about you, because you wouldn't appreciate that, so I'm not going to do that. The principle of public speaking. Now I'm going to take a little walk while this thing honks its horn. Feast of Offal is the next one. Rah! The Feast of Offal is what happens when we lose our cool. Well, it's actually not what happens when we lose our cool. It's what happens when others observe us losing our cool. And they go like, whoa, that guy's losing his cool. I'm going to lean in and observe. What we're doing is actually consuming that. And it's one part curiosity, one part, what is it, sadism? Kind of a curiosity, you know. I mean, gosh, I mean, better them than us. You know, some guys like totally flipping out at work. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. Or typically a stranger. If it's someone really close to us, it's a different dynamic and paradigm altogether. But if it's a stranger, let's say a guy at work actually flips out. You know, it's like one throws his stapler down. I've had enough. I can't take this anymore. This place is just too much for me. You know, we're looking at that. We're sitting in the next cube kind of, well, I just, you know, Mike's having a bad day today, or whoever. Yeah, kind of, you know, popcorn. I would suggest that when we do that, we internalize it in some way, especially if we take it personally. Especially if someone, for example, cuts us off on their street. A little road rage sets in. It's like, oh gosh, darn it, you know? And then we take that frustration to the gas station with us, and we go inside to pay for our gas, and you know, we're a little short with the clerk, and she's like, wow, that guy's in a bad mood, and she passes it along to somebody else, and it's a feast. We're consuming it one from another. From the guy that cut us off, we consume a little bit of his frustration. Maybe he's having a hard day, he's late to work, and then we take it in and we pass that along to the gal behind the counter that took our money, and then she passes it on to her boss, or whatever the case may be. We're all consuming and giving back. And I remind myself every day to try to not get involved in that. Of course, first of all, by not losing my cool. There's better ways to vent your emotion. But by when I'm seeing others having a tough day, not to either take it personally or internalize it, or then find myself in a position of having consumed that offal. Offal, of course, being the waste and byproduct of the butcher's art. You know, it's like you chopping up, making pork chops, and you know, all the toenails and hair and snouts and all that stuff, and you put it aside and grind it up into sausage, right? And someone else eats it. So to us, when we consume the waste of others and then make it into a consumable that we share with others, especially with our loved ones, what a terrible thing to do. So I try not to indulge in the Feast of Offal. Next, temperance. The principle of temperance consists of 3 sub-principles: honesty, objectivity, suffering, simplicity, and apathy. Suffering, because we're temperate, of course, means moderating our consumption, not eating too much, not drinking too much, not working too much, not playing too much, not having sex too much, not doing anything too much, but all of it in moderation. Suffering, because we suffer a little bit when we're temperate. You know, I want that big slice of end piece and the cake, but I'm going to satisfy myself with a little sliver from the middle. Suffer a little bit. I really would love to just, have a blowout night with the boys at the bar, but no, I'm just going to have 2 drinks over the course of 3 hours, have a nice chat, and go home. Oh, you get it, right? You suffer a little bit, but when you reflect on the value that comes of that, I think you'll find that it's worthwhile. It's good. It's worthwhile suffering. Simplicity, because a simple life is, by definition, a temperate life. We are consuming less when we are living simple. And then apathy, a little more complicated. Apathy is the state that we maintain when we recognize something that we can't do anything about. If it starts raining right now, down on me, I'm not ready for that. The best I can do is shut the camera down, stuff it deep in the pack, run under the bridge and wait it out. Hopefully a flash flood won't come get me. But it sure doesn't do me any good to start, cursing the heavens. Gosh darn you, heavens above, why do you do this to me? I'm apathetic, right? I'm apathetic. It happened yesterday. I broke part of my bike. The gas cap thing he broke, which is a frustrating thing and an expensive thing to fix. Immediately, I brought apathy to bear. There's nothing I could have done about that, especially in light of the pirate ride. So temperance, suffering, simplicity, and apathy. It's a good approach to life, if I do say so myself. And it's not my idea. Temperance is an old idea. Next one is agency and the great indifference. You and me are agents. These plants are agents. Kangaroo rat I saw over there earlier was agent. Or lizard over there is an agent. Agents are simply anything that's alive, anything that has some sort of a consciousness. I don't know that a plant has that, but maybe. The great indifference is everything else. The universe at large that don't give a damn. Just like this rock, just incapable of giving a damn. So too this entire landscape for the most part. The sky, the stars beyond. That's what triggers the nihilism. The recognition that good and evil are not written in the stars or in the sand, but in our minds, in chalk, in a blackboard above the head of the homunculus that will die and disintegrate into atoms per the atomic principle. Agency and the great indifference. That's probably the key element of my book, Going Alone. It's a good thing to get past, but it's a good thing to remember too. Next is the best seat in the house. To be okay where I am, what I am, and where I am, who I am, and what I'm doing. To not want to be anyone else, or be doing anything else other than what I'm doing right this moment. Even if that's having a hard day at work. It's a tough thing to be content with whatever circumstance we may be in, while all the while striving to make life better. It's like one of these. But it can be done, and it's a satisfying experience. Next is the Path of Wildness. This all started with that. The Path of Wildness was the first principle. I found this one in Japan, deep in the mountains, recognizing trails that were long forgotten and realizing I could go left or right. Since I knew very little about the area, I went with my gut. I went to the right. Sometimes I went to the left. In every case, it worked out. In every case, I found that the very fact of movement was an advantage over standing there at that crossroads and never moving forward at all, which a lot of us can do in our lives. We can stand at a crossroads from early on and remain at that crossroads all the way to the end of our lives, fearful about which road to take, giving ourselves more time to think about it, all the while the clock ticking, and ultimate death and destruction awaiting destruction. So when we're at that point, when we're at that one of those junctions in life, and it's right or left, or up or down, or him or her, or this or that, I suggest take in the facts. And if you don't have enough facts to make a decision right now, then give yourselves a little time to think a little more and gather some more facts. And when that time is up, make a decision. And if you need a little more time, give yourself a little more time. But watch out. Don't do that more than 2 or 3 times. Otherwise, you'll find yourself still making those, mulling it over on your deathbed. And what good did that get you? Wow. So the Path of Wildness, it's easy to find. Leaves blown in the wind. A beast's path through the brush. The course of a stream. And the inclination of our first inclination. I can't get it right. It's a poem from the book. I actually wrote that poem in Japan. The Path of Wildness is easy to find. The leaves blown in the wind. The course of a stream. The path of a beast. The beast's path through the brush. And the destination of our first inclination. I can't remember. Hashtag 55. Next is the risk of avoiding risk. Early in life, we're going to face some surface level risks. These are risks for education, connection, job, security. And there's going to be a lot of people, particularly our parents, who may be saying, go to the good school, get the good degree, find the good guy or gal, take that good job, get yourself a mortgage, start a 401k, make sure everything's settled, you got your life insurance. And these are good, sound things to say. I mean, there really are good things. And it's probably a good idea to do a lot of these. But watch out. If you've got another subroutine in your mind, in the back of your mind, telling you, I really would like to take that year abroad. Or, really would like to, take that chance on that business venture. Or, really would like to learn another language, or maybe, do whatever. Whatever that thing is that's mulling about in your mind. That's the deep risk. The deep risk is not attending to that. And then finding yourself in midlife or later wishing you had. There's a very, very good chance that you'll wish you had. You may fool yourself later that you didn't, that you're glad you didn't, but it's probably foolery. It's going to be a pang of regret. And the great thing is that for the most part, we live so long now, into our 70s and 80s, we can live more than one life. So my recommendation to assuage the risk of avoiding risk, to avoid the risk of avoiding risk, is to give yourself the entire decade of your 20s. Finish high school, go off to college, go as far as you can, get at least a bachelor's degree. I know, people say you don't need it anymore, but it's a good thing. Trust me. Really good value out there, especially find those instructors, find those professors that you really relate to and really connect to, and take all the classes they can, all their classes they teach, even if they're not classes that you're related to, even if you have to sneak in the back and you're not even enrolled. Take those classes. It's going to make a difference later. Take another year. Take 2 years if you need to get your bachelor's degree, but get it. You'll be glad you did. Don't go into debt though. Avoid that. You can avoid that. Go to community college. Go to a state school. You find a way. Work 1 or 2 part-time jobs. No, there's no real reason to finish with $100,000 of debt unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, which is a very admirable thing to do. But once you're done with your school, then ask yourself, what's that little sub-process telling me in the back of my mind? Is it telling me to go abroad? Is it telling me to start a business? Is it telling me to seek after him or her, or surf the world, or ride a motorcycle to someplace foreign and exotic, to learn a language, whatever it is, and then go do it. And if you're lucky, you'll come back, you'll finish, not just pleased with your experience, but battle-scarred, wounded, maybe still bleeding from the experience. Maybe you'll even die. And would that be such a bad thing after all? To have died pursuing the thing that you wanted? Especially in a universe where it doesn't seem to make a difference otherwise. Sure, you could have spent your life dedicated to helping orphans or puppies. And I'm not being sarcastic. I don't mean to sound that way. That is a good thing. But consider that other thing too. It's not selfish. It's selfish if you do it forever. Give yourself the decade of your 20s. When you're done, come back to us. Tell everybody, I'll be back. I'm done with school. I'll see you all at my 30th birthday. We're gonna have a party at at Applebee's. I'll be back. And I'll have some pictures and I'll have some stories to tell you. Woo! Won't I have some stories? Just a second. Next, sin and damnation. There are 5 sins in my worldview, and I'm guilty of all of them. Falsity, credulity, faith, superstition, and dogma. Falsity, because it's a sin to believe things that are not true. Credulity is a state of being a willingness to believe things on little evidence or really good reason to think so. Faith is the overt action of accepting something on the hope that it's true. Superstition is superstition. What a nonsense. I mean, why don't you just watch the TV instead? And then dogma, well, yeah, Greg, go ahead and get yourself under the feet of that institution, and accept that dogma, and let it be your guiding force, rather than taking that responsibility for yourself. The consequence of these things is damnation, not in an afterlife, but in the here and now. Damned to a life of believing things that may not be true. I understand how some people accept that, just as I accept the idea that we have no free will. It's a matter of faith with me. It's comforting. It's reassuring. It makes sense to me. I like it. But I will give it up. Reluctantly. It may be September, but it's still summer. $110 today. Almost done. The Great Life Adventure. This very thing. The thing I'm doing now. It's a little one. It's an adventure I have every 2 weeks. For the most part. Come out here for a night and a day. Boy, does it make a difference. It's like tapping that wheel. Keeping the momentum going throughout these remaining years of life. Starts to slow down. Come out for a night and a day. Tap. Come out again. Tap. I had my great life adventures in my youth. And I got really lucky. And then I found somebody to do it with in my wife. Because she's one of us. It makes all the difference. Can't imagine otherwise. Just a few more. The season of philosophy. That's now as well for me. That's what I'm doing right now. Sharing the ideas and the impressions and the principles and objectives that I found with you. Whoever you are. Maybe nobody. But that's all right too. Because this act of reciting them, I know they work. This act of reciting them, especially putting them in a formal setting like this, causes me to really flesh these out. This harkens back to the third objective, which is the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. Even in a vacuum, even in a desert, even with nobody around to hear, it's still a good thing to do. And this is my season of philosophy, to make a record of what I found. Just a few more. Oh, I forgot one. A few back. Just before I poured the water over my head. Complete oblivion. No final reunion, no final reconciliation, and no final justice. When we're dead, let me open my eyes up wide. When we're dead, we are gone. Except for our substrate, which will decompose and will be gone before long. Even if we try to keep it together keep it together with a little bit of what do you call it? Embalming fluid. Then once we're gone, there's no final reunion with anybody we left behind or anybody who went before us. No chance to reconcile with them. And no chance for justice after we're dead. So seek after those things now. Get together with the people that you need to, that you want to, that you know you should. Reconcile if you can. And pursue justice in a good and just way. And social way. Back up to just, I think I have 3 more. And I can go through them quick. One is the bullseye aim. Bam! It's an idea, first time I've talked about it on this video, an idea that every time I try to do something, I usually miss the mark by some appreciable amount. Sometimes I hit it. But the fact that I usually don't hit it, kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard, most of the time you're off the mark, You're going to be pretty happy, get pretty close. But if you expected yourself to hit a bullseye every time, how unreasonable is that? Likewise in life, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing, a lot of stuff that's happening. We're usually not going to hit the mark all the time. So I remind myself of that. So if I miss the mark sometimes and it's particularly public and it's particularly humiliating, I just say, bullseye aim, can't hit them all. The next one is the uphill climb, the uphill struggle. All life is an uphill climb. Entropy is pulling us apart, pulling our ideas apart, pulling our society apart. Yet we work hard. We all get up and we put our best clothes on and we drive to our work and we do our best to add order to the universe that is in a state of heading towards disorder. We can't stop that ultimately, but for some time we can work against that. It's an uphill climb. Likewise, your life, likewise mine. It's an uphill climb, and it's a worthwhile thing to push up that hill, to make our way up, rather than to simply let it sit on the side of the hill and wait for the sun to go down. And last one, arena and utility. Life is an arena for the experience, adventure, serious hard study and work of life, and an arena for us to use the objectives and principles that we make along the way. Which the objectives and principles are like tools, utilities, like hang around on a utility belt. We can pull out apathy. We can whip out a little pirate ride. We can, remind ourselves that that's the Feast of Offal. These things are handy. The bullseye, this bullseye's aim, I didn't quite make it. Kind of blew it by this much. Bullseye's aim. These things are helpful, very helpful throughout the day, throughout our lives. So once you have your objectives and principles, recite them, remember them. I recommend every day, get them in order. Make it in order that makes some sense, and talk to yourselves about them. That's one of the things about like the rosary beads. In fact, I've thought about doing that. I've thought about taking some of these luscious little stones and stringing them together from Siberia, rocks from Siberia, make a little 30-strand little bracelet. They'd be like borrow from the Catholic's rosary, the Buddhist rosary, and recite. The principle of temperance, the principle of pirate ride, the principle of whatever, right? Because it makes a difference. And if you're so interested, so inclined, share them with others. I bet you'll find there's a lot of people out there that don't have much of their own in terms of objectives and principles. Maybe some they've borrowed from others. A lot of the ones that are borrowed are simply it's like Diet Coke. They didn't see me. I caught their attention a little bit. They saw something moving out of the corner of their eyes. It's like Diet Coke. It seems to satisfy, but there ain't much there. There ain't much calories. There ain't much filler. There ain't much nutrition. It's just the status quo. It's what everybody's drinking. Spend some time and concoct your own delicious beverage of life. And with that, I'll finish. Thanks everybody for joining me again. I used up all my damn water. Now what am I going to do? Be safe, but not too safe. Take care.